Style for Life. I'm Stephanie Rumble, fashion stylist, accountability coach, and your guide to feeling good in your body and your clothes. Based in Christchurch, New Zealand, I bring over 3 decades of experience in fashion, fitness, and wellness to help you feel strong, stylish, and self-assured. Together we'll explore the emotional, physical, and practical sides of style, because true confidence starts from within. No matter your age or size, you deserve to feel confident and show up as the best version of you. I truly believe this. This is Style for Life. Kia ora everybody, and welcome back to the Style for Life podcast today. I'm very excited to have a lovely guest on the podcast today. But before I launch into his introduction, I just want to acknowledge all of you who listened to the podcast last week on human connection. It has certainly sparked a bit of conversation and debate amongst many of you and had some really great responses. And I really appreciate those coming through. So without any further ado, this is my friend Paul Morrow. And Paul, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about what you do and why.
Welcome. Thank you, Stephanie, for having me on. I love listening to your last episodes, and I think we have lots to talk about in regards to the theme of connection. Paul Morrow, I'm the chaplain at St Andrew's College and have been in that role for the past, this is my 17th year. So, and that involves schoolwork and chapels, but also a lot of old collegiate connections. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
No worries. And also Paul has something very much in common with us, or his family has something very much in common with our whānau, and that he also has a large family too, don't you? You have 4 children as well.
Well, I have 4. I'm one of 5, and my wife's one of 9. We had 4, and when we had 4, Joe's mum said, "Good start" to us.
Oh, it's so funny because Dave's one of 6 and I'm one of 3, and I really wanted 6, but there was just, I think at 4 he was done. So, there we are. We all kind of landed on the same numbers. So there we are. So we've had a lot of connection, haven't we? And we're really going to focus on in this podcast on the connection between, or men's connection actually. But before we get into that, I mean, one of the things I think to acknowledge too, and I'm sure you feel this, is in the process of raising our large families, there was so much connection around us for so long. And then when they leave, that changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does that. I mean, we're empty nesters for the first time this year. I mean, we've had kids come and go, but we are empty this year. And it does put an emphasis on how good or what you need to start to work on in your own relationship within your marriage. I've just been reading Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, and there are a few uncommunicated expectations that it was great having a conversation with Joe about that even last night. And you've just got to come back to some basics in regards to communication. Yeah,
totally, 100%. Maybe that's a story for another day. I feel like, I don't know about you, but this, I keep sharing this on the podcast because it's imminent, but in a few weeks we celebrate 30 years. And I think that I might have to interview David and have him on here and ask him how he's coped for 30 years. Maybe.
I shared the staff. I just spoke to all the staff this morning, actually, about generosity and the impact that has on physical health. And I know that you talked last week about connection on our physical health, and it's very much similar, and the detriment of loneliness on our health. But I shared a photo of Jack because our eldest got married last year in the chapel.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and we got married 30 years in the old chapel last year, and so that was pretty cool. It's nice to have Jack be married 30 years later in not exactly the same chapel, but on the same premise.
Yeah, very much. Well, look, we've heard a wee bit about your whānau, but do you want to tell us a little bit about you personally? You've got quite a remarkable sporting history as well, which is interesting, I think, to the audience, because I've talked quite a lot about fitness and health and sport on this podcast too. So just tell us a little bit about that.
I at school I did a lot of sport, did all sports, but I probably competed with siblings, and so tried to make a bit of my own mark and went into triathlons, and so did triathlons through my teacher training years for about 3 years. Went to the World Age Group Champs in '94 in Britain, came back, And my wife, not my wife then, but Jo said to me a funny thing. She said, "Don't give up triathlons for me, but I'm not going to stick around if you continue in them." So I had to go down the running track, which was ideal when I was getting a job anyway. I couldn't have maintained. Triathlon's a very lonely and selfish sport, and it's good for a period, but it's hard to maintain. And so I went down the running track and ran for 10 years and did track and mountain running. Had the opportunity, very fortunate opportunity, to go to 2 world mountain running champs, one in Italy and one in Malaysia. But, I just performed fairly averagely around the scene in New Zealand. I think my great highlight was getting a second or a third or a medal at the New Zealand cross country champs in 2000. That was pretty cool.
That's really cool. And, as we get to the age we are, and we're of similar ages, we have to hold on to all of those accolades, don't we, Paul? Because the physical accolades don't quite come as much as they used to. So, there's a bit of reminiscing that, it's good. And I relate to Paul, when I first met you, obviously you've been at school 17 years and our tenure at St Andrews was 13 years. So yeah. We were there right in the same time frame. I remember you were running at that point, and I was as well. So there was some similarity there. Yeah. Now, just moving on to our topic today. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on human connection in 2026, because I think it's changed so much in my life, and I find it a little scary.
Yeah. Look, I heard you mention the blue zones, and you look at those communities. And the threads that are common to those communities are connection with a wide age group. So you've got kids through to elderly connecting. You have huge focus on community service. So they're serving others in each of those interactions. And I think that, and I think I put this as I was just thinking about, I think our village has diminished significantly. I think our kids are having far less interaction with a wider group of people, and so therefore have less input into their lives. I always felt, and Jo and I were pretty on the same page about our parenting, but we thought if we could bring them up just appreciating and respecting people that they interact with good manners, then people will choose to continually engage with them because they enjoyed that interaction for the first time. And I think with our kids their time being dominated by the internet, I think is not a healthy thing. And again, I say these things just out of experience. I'm not an expert, and just observations. But I think our young people are struggling in those areas. I think we probably shield them from challenges and failure. And I think there's a real problem with our kids' resilience. And so therefore, when they experiencing failure, and often that's probably first year university, well, I think that's way too late, or when they get rejected from a hall, or when they get rejected of something that they don't know how to handle that, and they go into a crisis mode. And so those kind of things, I believe, are causing our young people issues because of that lack of connection, because of lack of a village, a mentor, or someone that would get alongside them. I was playing golf yesterday, actually, and I heard a lovely story. I'd played with a young man, and his language was atrocious. And I thought, actually, his behaviour was atrocious. And I thought, I'm not sure if I want to play with you again. And I played with another beautiful couple yesterday, and they told me that, they said, oh, we've got this kind of adopted son. We're taking him under our wing. And it was this young man. And you know what? I had played with him again, and his behaviour was different. And this couple were speaking into his life. And I thought we missed that.
I think you're right. And I think I've actually had a conversation with one of my children about this, and they said to me, I wish there was more places we could go outside of drinking environments. If you're a sports person, Zach's been interviewed on this podcast, so my audience is familiar with him. He has a lot of people around him all the time because of his sport and the way he works. But when, say, you look at, at other young people, they might be in an educational institution or something like that. But outside of that, they're back on their devices. It's back to devices. And this this child of mine said, I wish there was places I could go that outside of alcohol or sport that I could meet people and interact. I wish there was dances, and I'm not sure if you remember the blue light discos of our youth,
Yeah,
Just
and
like that.
also I mentioned one of the things that you mentioned in regards to the church, and well, I mean I was brought up in the church. I'm still in a church, and I think they're significant places. I think our club scene is diminishing because the lack of volunteer support. That's a struggle, an issue for our young people, and where they go if they don't have sporting opportunities or hobby situations because of the lack of resource and money. And so that is an issue. I think you talked about dating. I think, could you have another, other than dating online, how do you go to somewhere, just meet some people and just through conversation, and then, go, well, actually, I need to reconnect with that person because there was something there that I connected with. So yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It's a struggle.
And interesting you point out the volunteer piece there, because that's good for our audience to hear too, because some of our audience might be people who are in a place in their life where they do have the opportunity to volunteer. I know myself, it's definitely something that I'm considering more now at this point, having, third year empty nesting and,
Yeah.
perhaps having a bit more capacity for that. So I think, if you are in that place, it's a good opportunity to reach out in whatever sphere or place you're in to do that, because there's such a lot that you get from the volunteering experience as well as others contributing to you too. Yes, so
Yeah,
you can.
you're right, Stephanie. And I don't know, you'll be familiar with the Good Life book and the longitudinal study by Harvard. And the two predictors of us living a long, content, fulfilled life, number one, they're both social connections, but number one is just social engagement, everyday social engagement, not necessarily with people we know. So
Yes.
the second one is family and friends. And I can understand that some people have fractured families. And so, but the first one is available to anyone, all of us. And I've made some wonderful connections at a coffee shop of people we didn't know. And I ended up getting with a group of guys in that coffee shop and ended up taking a funeral of a guy that centered around. And I think we need the courage to engage with people in those circumstances at the supermarket, when we go to the service station, when we go to the coffee shop, and all of a sudden we'll make a connection with people. And I think that's advantageous to us if we have like-mindedness. Say, hey, why don't you come to a walk? Or, I mean, you called our walk a group in, which we'll talk about a wee bit later. Some of the guys might get offended by it's a walking group. We call it the Scramblers.
What we call it the old man walking group.
Oh, well, there's a 30-year-old in there, and we've had some young kids come along. But I think that aspect, just having the courage to speak with people that we don't necessarily know, but the care you take to engage or take interest can light up a person, and all of a sudden, wow, we connected somewhere, and that can go on to other things that can involve social connection.
Yeah, and actually I shared this with Poppy last week. We were in Aotearoa with my mother having a little time out with her, and I said to her, right, we're going for a walk, Pops, and every person we walk past we're going to give eye contact, smile and say hello to. She goes, oh, that's so scary. And we did it, and we got lots of interactions, and we got in a couple of chats with people, and I had the same experience last night. I went to buffet dinner with my family again, and I was standing waiting for the food, and I said to the lady something, and we just got talking. And she was there with her elderly parent and I was there with my elderly parent, and we made a connection, whether or not we connect again. But as you say, those incidental small connections on a daily basis have a big impact on our mental health. And I think that is something that you have to push yourself a little bit to do, especially our young people, I think, as well.
And how many connections did we make over COVID, right? Because we had time. And I can think of numerous connections I made with people over that time who I'm still in conversation with because we had time. And there's a problem. We're so busy that sometimes we've got to go to the next thing, and so therefore we avoid those small social interactions.
Oh, we've had such a lot going on that we're now overwhelmed and need to decompress, whereas, having that space. Have you ever wondered how you can be a fashion stylist with access to premium digital styling products? Do you want to be trained by the best in the industry and access these products that reflect fashion styling in 2025? If you do, then Image Innovators is absolutely the choice for you. This is because they have a network of over 1,000 trained fashion stylists worldwide, and when you work with them, you're getting the best of the best. They have evidence-based professional training offered by highly skilled facilitators that help you reach your absolute potential. This is a great alignment with Style for Life, as I in my business have used and endorsed their products for over 10 years with so many happy clients. And I'm really excited to say I'm also offering training to fashion stylists in conjunction with image innovators. So if you're ready to start your fashion styling training journey, then use the code BRIGHTRED25 for 10% off all products. Now, I want to ask you another question now. I want to talk about men specifically because we've had a really nice general chat. And I know you've got a lot of experience with younger people as well, and you have started this group, which we're going to talk about. So what's your personal experience of specifically young men? I know St Andrews is co-ed, so there's women and men, obviously, or girls and boys. Yeah. So what's your personal experience of young men and loneliness, and whether it's specifically particular to males or not?
I mean, there are some, I've certainly seen some lonely females, but I think young men, I think there's an issue of possibly internet. I think shame. I think they don't know how to handle mistakes. I think the internet is involved. Say if, for example, pornography may be a big issue for young men, they then get themselves stuck into a corner and don't know how to share that with somebody, and then all of a sudden find themselves that they're isolated and they don't know how to articulate that shame or feel that they can go to someone to talk about it. So I think that isolates them more and more and they retreat. I think that's a little bit of an issue. I talked about the village. I think we lack mentors. I've read a really good book called Bring It Out by Ben Pilgreen, and he was a minister that my daughter's, she was going to in San Francisco and a church. And he wrote this book, and he wrote the concept of the wisdom table. The wisdom table, we said, how many organisations do we get competent expertise around business, around charities? Why would we not do that for our own lives? And I think our young people lack strategic people in their lives that will speak into them, not for any other reason that they want the very best for them. And I look at that in my own life and I think, who have I got around my wisdom table that will have a conversation with me about accountability? They will challenge me and I won't be offended, and they're not going to say that anything other than, hey, I want the very best for you, Paul, and therefore this is why I'm communicating that. And I think we don't have that wisdom table. Our young people are lacking that. I think at St Andrews, I believe that, and that's where I teach, I think we have got some really good people that surround our young people, but that still, unfortunately, we've had some really tragic circumstances of young men taking their lives, and they are all separate incidents. I don't think we can pinpoint any one particular thing, but I do think there's an identity, possibly a loneliness, a struggle for how do I deal with something in my life. I think there are some other things, and so, yeah.
What do you think that, like, in terms of someone listening to this who probably most of the people listening to this will be either parents or, somebody in that demographic or somebody who knows somebody in that young, under 20 age group, what advice would you give to them to, help prevent this? Say they're a parent and they've got a young teenage, we'll say male, just because we're talking about males here, who's very uncommunicative, doesn't really want to engage. What would you say would be a way to sort of try and draw them out or to make them feel safe?
If I had that answer, we'd be saving a lot of lives, right? Johann Hari has, I don't know if you know of Johann Hari. He wrote the book Lost Connections and Stolen Focus. That Lost Connections, I think we're very quick to label, and again, I'm speaking from experience and just from a limited sense of particularly that book, but he suggests that we're quick to diagnose people and then give them drugs, and they're not, and while that might be okay for a moment, it's the continual questions after that diagnosis that he recognised he wasn't being asked that trapped him being on antidepressants. And he thought, when he was 18 to 30, he looks at it and goes, why am I still on these things? And why has a doctor not asked me a question? Hey, how are you doing? And how do you think we could go about by diminishing the concentration of that particular drug? And he talks about disconnection from meaningful work. having purpose, disconnection from other people, disconnection from meaningful value. That was interesting. A disconnection from status and respect. So almost a self-absorption from our young people, a self-addiction, and therefore, again, I think a real key, an antidote to that is saying, kids, I'm going to go and feed the homeless, come with me, and you'll get a sense of how the other side and how other people live, and this may change you. I shared a story with staff this morning about a young woman who was depressed. Her counsellor, she was being bullied, and her counsellor said, hey, why don't you just start doing little things for others? And so she started opening doors for others. She gave words of encouragement. She even baked a cake for someone who had been bullied. She had bullied her. And you know what? She didn't notice a change immediately, but she did notice a change in herself. She noticed a change that actually she felt a wee bit more optimistic. Her focus had changed from others away from her own problems. And then people began to interact with her in quite a meaningful way, smiling more authentically and saying thank you, that she recognised as not being sarcastic or snarky, but actually genuine. And she all of a sudden began to have a little bit of hope, and that changed her mindset. And so that is important. And I think he says also we're lacking an interaction with the natural world. You know, walking up the hills, I go and play golf, or that interaction with the outside world, walking in the forest, going for a tramp, those things just bring a sense of, oh my goodness, our world, look how beautiful it is, and etc. And then I think our young people are possibly lacking hope or their future. They go, what am I going to do in this world? And you know, we have a negative bias, and I think we have a conscious bias that picks out the negative things in our internet stream, then so they feed it. And therefore, we need to keep telling good news stories. We need to be telling our kids good news stories.
Yeah, look, I really resonate with what you're saying, and particularly on the last 2 points, or the first 2 points mainly around actually giving to other people. I think that's a very profound thought, and very profound, you know, you've read about this and experienced it too. And I know that, you know, having been in the situation with some other younger people too, I know that, you know, watching them give back and watching them help others definitely helps boost their self-esteem and sense of worth. And you know, experiencing at the moment, and I know you've potentially been through this too, you know, I've had parents who have been elderly and there's a lot more cares needed, and having my children involved and some others involved in that process, younger people, has been quite helpful on both sides. So, you know, even if it's not something you're going to do outside of your own whānau, something you can do within your own family can be helpful too, because you're right, the insular nature of just thinking of you. And I think there's that discretionary effort too. That's what I really heard in your conversation, which is over and above what's expected, just that little bit extra, which can really, really help. And again, also getting outside. Like, there's so much inside. The inside is kind of confounding, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that makes a difference. So on the outside, tell me, you have an initiative, or you started an initiative 10 years ago to take men of your age, or men, not young adolescents, out walking. Tell me about how that evolved and what's happening in that space now.
Yeah, look, I think this I just wrote a post that we're entering our 10th year, and possibly you got the idea from
I did.
that. Because 10 years ago, a good friend of mine, and you'll know Simon Challies, we'd struck up a bit of a friendship actually on the side of the cricket pitch, watching our boys play cricket. And he won't mind me saying this, it's well known that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. He is a successful businessman, a successful CEO, and the Parkinson's diagnosis was beginning to impact on his ability to run. He was a keen runner. He'd just had an experience, him and Tracy had been over in Vancouver in Canada, done some beautiful walks, and he thought, well, maybe walking could be a good avenue and another alternative exercise for him. And so he just said to me one day, you know, I've had this experience at walking, you know, I'd love to maybe walk more regularly. And at that stage I was running every Sunday and doing long runs, but all of a sudden I just thought, you know what, I don't need to run anymore. I've done that. That's been a stage of my life that I can come to terms with ending. And so I said to him, Simon, how about I come walking with, why don't I'll take you for a walk on this particular Sunday. And it started in the Kennedy's Bush. We'd drop my son off for a cricket training because they were doing fitness, and we'd walk up Kennedy's Bush. And we did that every week. And then we invited another guy, Andrew Murray, who was another stack parent who loved just walking, and then we invited him, and he came and joined us. And then we met Mike Mail, who's the Cookie Time guy, and he came and joined us. And we just found that we had some extraordinary conversations by walking side by side, able to endure long periods of silence, because that's okay, and then finding that we'd go into another conversation. And we found that some of those conversations were really deep. And, over the years, Simon and I would just begin to invite people and say, look, come and join us for a walk. In fact, in the last 3 years, there have been over 250 people do that walk, because I take a photo every Sunday and keep a record of that. And, I've counted up over 250 people, not always men. And we've had some lovely, as you said, you'd been on that walk. I've had my daughters come up. Other fathers have had their daughters come and join them, daughter-in-laws. And ultimately, we've just invited people, and some people try it once and say it's not really for them. And yet there are probably a group, about 30 on our chat, who are regulars, and we can have anyone from 2 or 3, but generally around 6 to 8 regularly, but up to 18 of us will walk every Sunday. And then we go and have breakfast together, and we're finished pretty much by 9:15, and the day is for us to do whatever after that. I know it's been a massive support. Simon wrote a lovely post at the end of the year, just acknowledging that it was entering the 10th year and just what it meant to him. I know that there have been other people who have had some challenging circumstances in their lives, who have felt that actually that was a group of people where they felt listened and just there, not necessarily to fix their problem, but just to be there and be a listening ear. And I know it's been a huge support. We've also had celebrations. We've had lots of successes, and we've had lots of laughs, and lots of times where we've bantered and had each other on, particularly around the table as we have breakfast. And I'm sure we've been an earful to people around us as we've talked and laughed. And so I know, it's been a place where a lot of positive emotions and engagement and meaning has come.
And you know what, Paul, I think, so the context around how I know a lot more about this is I knew this was occurring, and my husband, David, who I've shared extensively, is medically retired, had been, it had been a challenge for him having to leave his profession. And I knew about this walking group, and I worked on him for 3 months. And I said, you need to go. And he was mentally ready when he came to the group. And I know that he has made some really great friends and connections out of it, thanks to you and Simon. So I just want to acknowledge that. And it's really improved his mental health. And I've seen that from a personal level, and I could come walking with you, but it's his place to go with you guys. I come occasionally when something's different for me or when it's appropriate. But I just think the inclusive nature of something like this that's men is really good. I mean, women tend to be, for whatever reason, tend to get together in groups perhaps a little bit more. And at middle age, life gets busy and challenging. There's children and there's financial pressure and there's all sorts of things that go on. So it can be really hard to connect. So I just think, I really want to acknowledge that. And I think it's been good. And I think I'd like to see more of this across different age groups as well. So what I want to hear from you too is, now we've talked quite a lot about young people, and now you've been in this walking group and you've told me you've had 250 people come along, which is amazing. What do you see are the challenges for men your age, and I'll say our age, around connection?
Another book I'll quote, Arthur Brooks' Strength to Strength. I don't know if you've read that. And he talks about CV values versus eulogy values. I think we're in a society sometimes that puts a lot of pressure on achievement, or a lot of emphasis on achievement. And we forget that actually we're going to be remembered generally for how we've made other people feel.
So true.
And I think that we place such a great emphasis, but when we come to a funeral, and you think about a funeral, we don't speak much about a person's successes or things that actually they're forgotten about pretty quickly, but we will say so much about that person's character and how the people that surrounded them and the love that they offered and the kindness that they showed and the resilience that they worked through and the determination they had, all those kind of things. And they're words that I think Arthur Brooks points out that are far more meaningful and far more life-giving, and that we probably need to focus on as a society more of those things. And I think that's important. And I think that because there are some semi-retired, some retired, or people that in that group that we have who certainly have a lot more time on their hands and certainly aren't involved in a project that they used to be or as time-consuming as what it was. And so out of that sometimes can become, well, where do I fit now? Or where do I get my kind of meaningful value when I was in a CEO role, or I was owner of this massive business and lots of people were reporting to me, and all of a sudden that's not there. And so I think there can become a kind of a tension that's held in that space. And so again, referring to the blue zones, there's that output to others is really important. Them finding some kind of opportunity where they can give is really meaningful. And I also think, look, some men, because I have another group on a Thursday, every second Thursday, where we just go and have a drink and we just talk. And a lot of those guys say they so appreciate it, but if I didn't organise it, they wouldn't do it. and so I think sometimes you've just got to, if a guy thinks, hey, yeah, I have got an ability to organise it, don't get offended if people don't come. Someone will come and it'll be life-changing for that person. And the great thing about our walk is that you turn up. I do have a chat, and generally I do put a message on a Saturday, but there's always someone there. And it doesn't matter that you're not there. As in, there's no compulsion or that you have to turn up. If you're there, you're there. Someone will be there. And I think that's really cool because there's no pressure. And I think and also it's regular. I think that's really important. I think sometimes we can have friends and we don't see them for a month or 6 weeks because we're so busy, and we go, oh, we've got to organise a dinner out. And then we go, oh, where do we fit that in our calendar? But actually we know that every Sunday there's going to be some people to meet, and you can come along and we'll have breakfast together. We'll have some great conversation, and hey, go and get on with your week and do whatever you need to do.
Gosh, the time goes so quickly, Paul. I suppose we just talked, and I like there's so many more things I could ask you. But I just want to say at this point, if someone's listening, and maybe that it is a man listening, or it could be a woman, and maybe either of those people feel like they'd like to, step into a bit more connection, either with their own gender or with other people, what would be your sort of lasting or leaving comment around how to improve your connection with other people, how to sort of combat loneliness, particularly if you've had a busy life with children and they've left home, or you've had a busy life at work and you've retired, or just you haven't had a lot of people in your life but you're feeling that need for connection? What would be sort of your number one piece of advice around that, just to for our listeners?
Yeah, two things. I think that the good life, the longitudinal study out of Harvard, the number one predictor of us living a good, long, contented life is our ability to connect with anybody, and that's just starting a conversation, a meaningful conversation that goes a bit beyond hi, how you doing? It goes, it may be you seeing someone whose credit card it fails, and you go, hey, can I shout you that coffee? Or doing little things. It doesn't have to be big, but it'll have an impact. And all of a sudden, that will enable connection. And secondly, a great story, just quick, at a golf course. I just took a wedding for a couple who both had lost their partners. And that one guy had come out from England, his wife died within 4 years. He said the golf course at Hereward had provided him more support than what he may have got if he'd been back home in England. He could not believe it. So there are a lot of people out there who may be in the same boat, and it's just about making or trying to make that connection and trying. And if it doesn't work the first time, don't be scared or say, oh, see, no one cares. We've got to keep trying that and just not giving up. And because there are wonderful connections to be made there, and there are a lot of people probably in a similar boat to you.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yeah, and I totally relate to that too. And also I just want to add too, if any of you are listening from my running group, DTRS, we're a huge running club, and there's people who have actually retired from running who still join us on a Saturday morning for coffee, who are perhaps older or injured or whatever. And both two people I can particularly think of are people in their 70s who have lost their partners recently, and they are a bit more lonely, and they come along every week and have coffee. And one of them's coming along to our Bulla Marathon weekend, and he's driving the VO vehicle, and, he'll share lots of yarns with us. So I think, there's still ways to connect too, and I think you have to push yourself. So Paul, thank you so much for giving up your time. Really busy. You're just at the start of your school term, and I really appreciate you fitting me in here. And no worries. Thank you. And look, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Tune in next week. We're going to talk about something completely different, not with Paul, about how to dress for a wedding. Maybe you could add some tips on that one, Paul. But that will be next week's podcast. Anyway. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and kia kaha, and I look forward to talking to you next week about weddings. Thank you for listening to the Style for Life podcast. Don't forget, you deserve to feel fabulous at every age, every stage, and at every size. If you're loving the show, hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps more amazing people like you find their way back to life through style. Thanks again. Until next time.